with the ongoing or maybe completed Bihar elections, depending on my non-existent editing skills, let us talk about an issue on almost nobody's mind. An issue concerning one of the most shocking pieces of police brutality and how its effects are still being felt throughout Bihar even 4 decades later. Let us talk about the Bhagalpur blindings. 1979, Bihar, a place where crime is rampant, poverty is everywhere and the politicians don't care. Well, मतलब आज के बिहार जैसा ही. Before we get into the meat of the matter, I'd like to provide some context for the prevalent lawlessness at the time. In the 70s, the state of Bihar was already in turmoil due to the civil disobedience movement launched by Jai Prakash Narayan or JP. The movement was aimed against Indira Gandhi and the Congress government. Partly because of the JP movement, Mrs. Gandhi proclaimed the infamous emergency of 1975. Eventually in 77, after the emergency was lifted, democracy emerged victorious when the Congress government was dislodged and the Janata Party was elected. A return to normalcy was expected after a tumultuous period in Indian politics. However, the restlessness from the JP movement, compounded by the dark period of emergency, still remained. The post-emergency period also saw the rapid growth of crime and corruption, especially in Bihar. There was a general decline in the political and administrative machinery. This led to the rise of the so-called Jungle Raj. You must have heard it being mentioned in this year's political speeches and debates. The criminal politician nexus grew powerful day by day, and the thugs, even if caught, were swiftly released without impunity. The masses were scared. The police were helpless. The courts were slow and inefficient. The political leaders turned a blind eye. Tensions grew, and then finally, in October 1979, a thread snapped. Some police officers in Bhagalpur, a district nestled beside the river Ganga, took it upon themselves to impart justice in a swift and possibly the cruelest way possible, and thus started the infamous operation which would last nearly an year before it came into the national limelight. Law enforcement officials rounded up a bunch of under-trials and brought them to the police station. By using some long needles or bicycle spokes, the police pierced their eyes. But the pain of the victims didn't stop there. The officers then continued by pouring sulfuric acid into the mutilated eye sockets. The details are shocking. Indira Gandhi herself made a moving speech about the incident in Parliament. Later, Supreme Court Chief Justice Y.V. Chandrachud would go on to say that the testimonies gathered from the prisoners will shock the conscience of mankind. However, not everyone was shocked. The locals vociferously supported the police. According to them, the victims were criminals, the courts simply weren't good enough, and thus instant justice was necessary. But it is also important to remember that these victims were still under trial. It means that their cases were still pending. The accusations on these victims ranged from petty crimes like theft to heinous ones like rape and murder. It's not difficult to understand why there was so much support for the blindings. The public demand for quick justice has been seen across time and throughout many cases in India. A more recent parallel can be seen in the Hyderabad rape case, where all the 4 accused were shot in an encounter by the police. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that the local populace, irrespective of caste, class or creed, took to the streets in support of the barbaric blindings. To them, it was merely poetic justice. The police's actions seemed vindicated because of the fact that there was a noticeable reduction in crime after the blindings. Okay, where was the media when all of this was happening? The operation ran for nearly a year and nobody got a whiff of it. The local newspapers did report the issue, but it couldn't get attention from outside Bhagalpur. The national media couldn't care less, and the killings continued unabated. The media's apathy only emboldened the police and led to many more people losing their eyes. It was only after the outstanding lawyer Kapila Hingorani filed a petition in the Supreme Court that the blinding started grabbing eyeballs. The Bhagalpur blinding case made jurisprudence history by becoming the first case in which the Supreme Court ordered compensation for violation of basic human rights. It was judged that the police, by blinding the victims, had deprived them of their rights to life and liberty, and accordingly, 15 sub-inspectors were suspended. Satisfactory ending. That's it, right? No. After a short suspension, the 15 sub-inspectors were quietly reinstated one by one. It looked as if the state government had indirectly rewarded them by giving them powerful portfolios and comfortable postings. So technically, so far only low-level police officers have been charged despite accusations that the blindings had been allegedly encouraged from the top. The police superintendent of Bhagalpur, Vishnu Dayal Ram, who was accused of being a key player in this whole fiasco, was neither arrested nor suspended. He was simply transferred. After retirement, Vishnu Dayal Ram joined the BJP in 2013 and is currently serving as an MP from Jharkhand in the Lok Sabha. Paradoxically, the two men who did more than anyone else to bring the blindings to light and expose the culprits ended up paying the consequences. Superintendent of Bhagalpur Jail, Bachulal Das, was suspended for speaking out. Lalit Vijay Singh, who as Deputy Inspector General headed the investigation team that showed the police as the guilty party, was later suspended for having publicized the report. Both these men would later spend years fighting in courts to repeal their arbitrary suspensions. And yes, remember the court-mandated compensation I mentioned? Each of the victims gets a grand pension of 750 rupees per month. That's it. What is almost laughably tragic is that the victims haven't received their pensions since November 2019, almost a year. One can only imagine how they managed to survive in the middle of a global pandemic and strict lockdowns without their primary source of livelihood. And yes, remember the immediate reduction of crime in Bhagalpur after the blindings? Unfortunately, the deterrent effect didn't last for long. According to official state police statistics, crime in Bihar and Bhagalpur both has nearly doubled in the period between 2010 and 2019. Therefore, technically, the killings didn't have any effects. So, do the blindings remain just a small but ugly blot on Bihar's history? The question itself is wrong actually. These incidents aren't just a part of Bihar's history, they are still very much part of the present as well. Even after the Supreme Court verdict, the blindings never really stopped. Today in Bihar, blinding has become an effective tool to terrorize lower caste and poor people into submission. This is what is known as the demonstration effect. The police brutality incident from '79 serves as a cruel template for vigilantes in modern-day Bihar to follow. The reasons for snuffing the light out of people's eyes has been shockingly trivial. A teacher blinded a student in one eye because he didn't give a proper answer in class. A man blinded a small boy who plucked mangoes from his trees. Another man was assaulted in late 2012 because his wife contested for the post of Sarpanch against a higher caste candidate. A farmer was blinded in 2014 for having an extramarital affair. A laborer met with the same fate when he demanded his wages. A woman in 2016 was blinded after being accused of witchcraft. This is what lack of accountability does. Since the original police officers who performed this act weren't punished, it sends out the signal that it is perfectly okay to blind a person without fear of consequences. This is what instant justice does. It provides short-term relief. I'll be honest, when I first heard that the 4 accused in the Hyderabad rape case were shot dead, a part of me was really happy. But the very same part was horrified when it learned about the brutal custodial deaths of Jairaj and Benix. Instant justice without accountability in the long run inspires perverse imitations which try to deliver a distorted form of justice. More often than not, it is usually the poor and the socially backward who bear the brunt of this so-called justice. It is therefore aptly said that justice delayed is justice denied, but justice hurried is justice buried. We'll end the video with a short trivia. Just to lighten the mood a bit. Remember when I said and thus started the infamous operation which would last nearly an year before it came into the national limelight. There was a movie made by Prakash Jha based on this incident whose title was the same as the name given to the aforementioned operation. Nope, not this one. Yep, that's the one. The name of this operation was Operation Gangajal. Tell us in the comments, what do you think? Were the killings right or wrong? Healthy discussions and constructive criticism is welcome. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.